Hello MVC developers. Today I'd like to talk to you about templates. We'll look at editor templates, display templates. I'll even show you how to customize T4 templates. Let's take a look, shall we?
Editor and display templates were introduced with MVC 2. They are very similar to partial views. However, there are some differences. We'll create a class here so we have some data to demonstrate this first. And I'm using code first out of Entity Framework. So you need to specify an ID. It can either be just ID or class name followed by ID. And now we'll also create a new controller. I'll just copy the home controller here and rename it person controller. So both display and editor templates, you may have already seen them. So if you've ever scaffolded out views, then you've seen the display for and edit for in the scaffold out views. And that's using the built-in display and editor templates. I'm going to show you how you can extend that. So now that we have the new controller created here, we'll go and create some dummy data for testing purposes. And we'll pass that person data to the view just to demonstrate. Scaffold out a view. And you can see the display for that the scaffolding creates. That is doing generating HTML based on the type, which is string in this case for the model name. That's how both display and editor templates work. It's like a big factory pattern that looks at the type that you're passing in and gives you the matching display or editor template based on that type. There's nothing keeping you from doing say an input for an editor for a display template other than convention. So the convention is that you would have editor for generating inputs while display for does the HTML for displaying. Which is to create under the shared folder the display templates folder. Same thing for editor templates. If it's under shared folder like this, it'll apply to your entire project. If you do it under the views and then controller name folder, then it will be specific only to that particular controller. So you have that way of doing of overriding it or doing it project-wise. The other thing that you'll notice is that it's named person.cshtml. That convention is also important. The name of your display or editor template must match the type. And here we go, you can see it working now. So now let's get a little bit more complex, and we'll create a new class here, manager, with some properties of type person, and show you how powerful this is. So imagine a scenario where you can create editor or display templates, or both, for your entire project, and then anywhere that you're editing a person or you're displaying person information, it'll use this template. You don't have to go through and find all the areas and change them. You have the razor in just one location. Very powerful approach. There's nothing quite like this in web forms. So here I've added a list of type person, which is the direct reports. And the beauty of this is that MVC will recognize anything that implements IEnumerable, and it'll iterate through the objects in that and use the appropriate display or editor template for them. And now that we have some dummy data here, um, we'll create a new manager, assign that to the direct reports. I prefer to start my demos from scratch like this so that if you wanted to, you could do the same thing, starting off from the beginning. Now we have our supervisor, and we have our direct reports. And now you can see in our view, all we have to do is reference that property with the display for. Go finish adding some direct reports. So you can use the display for and the editor for edit templates for any custom type that you want, like this, or you could do it for all of the date times, for example, if you wanted to do a jQuery UI date control for all of them, or a color control. It's all type based. So that's the power of display and editor template. And you'll notice that I didn't have to do a for loop or anything within my view. So as I mentioned, the MVC is smart enough to see that that implements IEnumerable, and it'll iterate through those and repeat whatever the display template is generating. If I wanted to customize it just for person, then I could have done under views, person, um, display templates, and editor templates there. Now, while we're still on the topic of templates, I'd like to show you a very powerful technique that every serious MVC developer should be using. First, I'll clean up the view here to better demonstrate. And I'll go and add an images folder, drag my favorite honey badger image in there. I love the preview in Visual Studio 2013 that we get. So there's the friendly honey badger. So what would happen if I was to rename the image to something that doesn't exist, right? We run that, we'll just get a broken image, right? That's a runtime error. Now let's go install package T4MVC. So this was created by David Ebo, and it's a powerful T4 template. So you can see here I've got the nice IntelliSense and coloring and so forth for the template. There's the T4 editor, a Visual Studio add-on. There's two of them actually. There's one from Telligent, but this one is free and works great, and you can download it from Visual Studio extensions. And now I have nice IntelliSense here to tell me the name of my images. So that's nice, but if I come back here and change the name, this MVC build views to true will give us compile time errors instead of runtime errors for our views. Now there is a downside. It does take a little bit longer to compile your project, and when you're debugging it will take a little bit longer. However, I think it's well worth it to have compile time versus runtime errors. You can see here now combining those two, and I have a runtime error for an invalid image. That's really just the beginning with T4MVC. The real power of T4MVC comes with your action name and controller name constants. So if you've ever gone and looked at some of the controllers that are auto-generated, you'll see all of the action names as magic strings, with quotes around them. So just imagine if down the road in development you decide to rename one of these. You're going to have runtime errors instead of compile time errors. So let's look at an example here. See how we have action name constants now? So first of all, the IntelliSense will help you determine if it's the right one or not. But let's go a little bit further and say that we have one of these that gets renamed. So we'll create a new action here. Call it blah blah. Now you do need to open up T4MVC in order for it to rescan your project and regenerate those action name constants. It does it every time that you open up a text template. It'll regenerate the code associated with that from within Visual Studio. So you can imagine a process where perhaps automated or once a week or so that the developers would open this up and regenerate it and then check it back into TFS. And there you go, you can see you would get compile time instead of runtime errors for any of your action names being renamed. So next, while we're on the topic of templates, I'd like to show you how you can customize the text templates that generate your controllers and your views. First of all, to demonstrate this, I'll clean up one of our views here. And we'll once again create a class with some test data in it. And using code first, you can use the convention class name followed by ID, or you could just call it ID in order to have a primary key when you're doing code first within any framework. Add a few properties here. Description. And a new controller. Just copying the home controller. And we'll create a little bit of test data here. So you may see as I'm switching back and forth that it's highlighting the one that I have open. That's this track active item in Solution Explorer. That's really useful when you're alt-tabbing between your code to be able to see in Visual Studio Solution which one you have open, and it'll highlight it if you have that. So now we have a little bit of dummy test data here, and we'll scaffold out a view. Take a look at that. And this is what we're going to end up customizing. It reflects on whichever model you've passed it person and then generates these display fours. Let's take a look at that. Pass in some data first. I'm using control period and then selecting the using statement. Create a little bit of dummy data here. There we go. So if we wanted to customize those templates that generate this razor, we could go here on our local machines under this folder buried deep in there, and the code templates folder. You'll see the add view and add controller subfolders. Now you could edit these text templates right here on your local machine, however then it would only apply to you. Instead, if you want it to apply to everybody that's using your project, all you have to do is copy that entire folder over into your project, code templates folder. And then, now that we have it copied over, we're going to delete the one we're not using. We're not using the controller one. And then each of the text templates, every time that you open it by default, it generates code. Oh, the tangible T4 editor, that's what's giving me the nice IntelliSense and coloring there within Visual Studio. So we don't need this one. We're only doing CS HTML for Razor. And we need to first go and make sure that none of the text templates is actually generating code. So go in here and change that. And then we can go in and delete each of the code files that was actually generated by that. We don't need it to generate code. So we'll just delete those. And once that's done, then we can actually go in and customize this. And the beauty of this approach is that everyone who uses this project will now get these templates for their views or their controllers. We'll add a new one here. And you can learn a lot about the internals of the scaffold that generates your views and your controllers just by looking through this T4 code. And now that we'll add, and you can see that it'll show up here in the drop-down list of scaffolding templates right after we've saved it. Oh, cool. We don't need to go and change any configuration or anything else. And the beauty of it is that this will show up for anybody that is using this same project. So if you check those customized templates into TFS, everybody on your team will now have a standardized way of creating new views. You can customize the existing ones or add them, maybe type specific. So combining this with editor display templates, a great way for a team to standardize on how they're generating their views throughout their project. And you can see there it shows up, and it's all customized.
Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the session. Please join us next time.